Okay, we're live, Scott.
We are? Hey.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Monday Ask Me Anything with, in this case, you've got Scott Jernigan and Michael Smyer.
How's everyone doing out there?
So, Mike Meyers, who normally does the AMA, is on vacation. He's somewhere in eastern Washington state, crossing the mountains. And when I talked to them this morning, or tried to talk to them this morning, it was a lot of crackling noise. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going live. And my normal partner in crime, Dave Rush, is also traveling. So I asked our systems engineer, Michael Smyer, if he would join us today and ask some crazy questions, or get some crazy questions asked of him. So the purpose of doing this AMA is to enable those of you who are studying and are stuck at home during this coronavirus craziness, that to give you an opportunity to ask the people who write the training materials and do your video classes and all that. Ask us anything. We specialize in the CompTIA certifications like IT Fundamentals Plus, CompTIA A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus, but we can go well beyond that. And with Michael here today, we can go well beyond any of that. So now's a chance to ask some crazy questions, some hairy questions, and we'll just see how far Michael can fly. I'm Scott Jernigan. I'm editor-in-chief for Total Seminars. I have been writing with and teaching for Mike Meyers for a long time. I'm also an author in my own right, and have been, as I mentioned, teaching for a couple of decades in this. So that's who I am.
Yeah, I'm Michael Smyer. I've been, again, with Total for quite some time. Came on originally to help with the website, but kind of became general, yes, I joke my job is, but at this point I'm run all the internal systems and even the public-facing systems, and do some programming on our Total Tester product, and even some of the photography and a little bit of the writing with some of the books. So, but mainly systems and programming and photography, really. So, kind of a diverse set, and lay out the occasional book when Scott asks.
And in the background, he's also a music guy, a serious sound man, and has, like a lot of us, he has an extensive life outside of Total Seminars as well. So
yeah, I run sound at my local church. I mix and record and do stuff like that. So yeah.
And Michael is a serious audiophile. So you can ask him questions about that too. And you can ask him questions about photography because he's insanely into it. So there you go. Lots and lots of stuff. So the thing we're doing here is ask us questions, and we will address questions all the way up to 4 o'clock Central Daylight Times, or until the questions run out. So now's your chance to ask questions. Let's check in, shall we?
Yeah.
Who's here? Got a
couple FYI, I will be posting as Total Seminars channel in the chat. So
if you want to speak directly to him, don't at Mike Smyer to him, but do at Total Seminars channel. So Mario, welcome. You were here early, and Andre too. Excellent. Europe is represented. Charles Plassman, excellent. Hello. Mike, yes. Mike is on vacation. As I mentioned, he's should be in Washington. He is in Washington State today. His plan, I think, is to do Washington, float through the Washington wine country, down through California, obviously through Oregon before he gets to California, and then to say hi, socially distanced, to our publisher in San Francisco, and then off to Denver to hang out with his daughter, son-in-law, and grandsons. So he's swinging through the Western United States.
Looks like I see one question. Brendan asked about the difference between analog and digital signals. Sure. Down at the lowest level, the difference is a discrete versus continuous, if you want to get really fancy. But essentially, an analog signal is always changing, continuous, and a digital is kind of a stepwise fashion. So there's actually a digital number. And when you look at if an analog signal, it would be literally voltage swinging on a line, or waves of pressure through the air. Whereas a digital signal, it's a series of snapshots, almost like a movie where you have different frames, but you have different snapshots of what that actual voltage was at any one time. And so you could say that and then you just give that voltage a number, and you just, as it goes up and down, the numbers go up and down, and that's a digital signal. And so if you have more of those, the more of those samples you have, and the bigger the sample, how big the number can get, determines kind of how good the quality is. The Nyquist theorem will tell you exactly what the highest frequency you can. But
what?
The Nyquist theorem. So if you want to actually, one of the kind of cool things about digital signals is you can capture. You can know precisely what the maximum frequency you can capture with a particular sample rate. And it's actually, if you've ever heard of it, it's called the Nyquist theorem. I think I'm pronouncing that right. But it states that you sample at double the rate you want to capture. So for instance, human hearing can go up to 20,000 kilohertz approximately, which means that you need to take a snapshot in time 40,000 times a second.
Which is what brings us to CD quality audio, right?
Yeah, and if you've heard of CD quality audio, you know that's probably seen the thing 44.1K. That's just 44.1 kilohertz, which means that if you divide that by 2, you can record up to 22,000 and a half kilohertz frequency.
And that enables this like perfect stereo, right?
Well, that's not even about stereo. That's just how high of a frequency you can record. And so which means that is above the human hearing.
Right.
So a CD can record all of the frequencies that a human can hear.
Nice.
0 all the way up to 22,000, which is higher than what we can. So
my old vinyl albums, are those digital or analog?
Purely analog, of course, because they're just a needle going up and down and side to side, is what they're doing. So that's kind of often in the weeds about digital versus analog, but.
So here's the game we're going to play.
Yeah.
Every time you drop a jargon word, you have to put a nickel in the popsicle jar. So you're one in right now.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things, people, that can happen and will happen today in this session is you'll ask a simple question and Michael will take it and run with it and go much, much deeper than you were expecting. And that's okay. If it gets too deep, we'll just pull out and dry ourselves off and go on to the next question. So.
Yeah, but Brendan, fundamentally, that's the difference. Is it digitized? Is it chunked up into little discrete numbers? That's digital. Or is it a continuously changing phenomenon, like voltage swinging on a line or pressure waves, or a groove in a record? That's analog too.
Yep.
So that's what's going on there.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So not surprising, Tulowitz here. Hi, good to see you again. Alan Dugan. Dave's Pi sessions they've been fun. On Fridays, Dave Rush, our senior instructor, is doing Friday Pi Day, which is an excuse to play with a very cool piece of hardware, and also to practice Linux. So he's done a couple of sessions already on Fridays. Those are recorded on YouTube, just like the rest of our sessions. And so you can see what he's done, and he's teaching it pretty much as a kind of a continuous class. So good to sort of skim through his first couple of sessions before you join us on Friday. Although you can ask him anything on the Pi, and he'll be happy to wax poetic on it. There you go. And Charles, if you have some questions on the CLI, today would be a very good day to do that. Both Michael and I are comfortable with command line in both Windows and Linux and terminal in Mac OS. So yeah, ask away. What else? Who else is here? Look, I'm here. Alice Potsy, good to see you. Andre, LBOE, excellent. Oh, yeah, of course, the lockdown continues, right? I'm just kind of skimming for questions now. Mario, oh, you live in South Africa. Of course you do. Nice. How many continents do we have today? Falak, Brendan, yes. Fise. Lots of people here. Tellowit had a comment for you, Michael, that he does sound and video at his church as well. So
yeah, I saw that. Yeah, no, that's very fun. There's a lot of us out there.
Right. First, I'm not sure I understand this question.
Yeah.
C Plasma 2009, first going into the verifier in Windows. How can I print out a list of false driver signatures?
It's not ringing any bells, but.
Huh. I don't know.
Nice.
So I skipped a whole bunch of questions accidentally. What have we got here? Yeah, I really did skip. Dun, 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 dun. The scroll, as Mike has mentioned many times, it sometimes just goes crazy and it'll jump from 2 o'clock all the way to whatever time it is right now in just one fell swoop. And so we just sort of jump over a bunch of questions. If we miss a question, feel free to just ask it again. We'll see it and know that it was asked already. So it's all good. Block, yes, I think you is. Oh, Security Plus, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cindy Anstey asked a question. Does anyone know what a blue light PC is?
Yeah, I saw that question as well. I did a quick Google. I couldn't find anything. I found references to Flux, but beyond that, I don't know any particular hardware or brand or anything like that. Is that what you're thinking of, or are you referencing the blue light from the monitor type thing?
Or the blue light special at Kmart. Oh wait, that's not even a thing anymore, is it? Okay.
Scott, have you tried that like on a small tangent, have you ever tried that Flux stuff, those blue light reducer
no
plugins?
No, I haven't. Tell me, what does it do?
They turn your screen orange essentially after sunset. They and the reason you do it is the blue light messes up your circadian rhythms, aka it makes you stay awake. So by filtering out the blue light in your monitor, it makes it easier to fall asleep, essentially.
So gaming till 1 o'clock in the morning is not doing me good? Is that what you're telling me?
No, if you want to game till 1 in the morning, do not use these because the blue light will keep you up. But if you want to fall asleep, Flux or Nightlight or any of the ones that are built into Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, very useful. So
very cool.
And all that stuff.
All right, so you're going to have to do this one, Michael. Dr. Quinn, hello, asks, would you please talk about supersonic?
Supersonic.
So I'm guessing she's not talking about I don't know.
Yeah, a little
I,
more context on that.
yeah, we need more context on supersonic, and that might be a good question for asking Dave, since he's the actual licensed pilot in the group.
Yeah, are we talking about speed or something more tech related?
Or Sonic the Hedgehog, I don't know. All right, here's a question from C. Plasman. Can I set up a partition to work with and troubleshoot both Linux and Mac OS?
In theory, you can install, well, Mac OS can only be installed legit on Apple hardware.
Why is that?
Because the lawyers at Apple say so, and they have a lot of money to make that happen. So there is a whole Hackintosh community out there where people build their own machines and hack Mac OS to install it on there, but it is not officially sanctioned.
Gotcha.
But beyond that, you don't really hear too many people installing Linux on side by side on Apple hardware and dual booting. I think it's possible. I know that older machines you could install Linux on to kind of give them more life. But generally we use virtual machines when we want to work with Linux on Macs. And also, kind of the nice thing about working on a Mac is that it is a Unix machine. Mm-hmm. So you don't need, oftentimes the reason you're trying to spin up a Linux machine is because you want access to software that runs on Linux, and most of that software will run natively on a Mac. That's one of the big reasons why there are so many Apple laptops in developer
community.
Yeah, because it'll run all that Linux software.
So
natively.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Total Seminars development team exclusively uses Macs, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's just a couple of us, but yes, we're both on Macs. So
nice.
Yeah, so we both use. I'm connected from my 27-inch iMac here. Our other developer, Travis, he works off his MacBook Air. So yeah, it just makes things a lot easier. Although the stuff we write runs on Linux servers. So
nice.
So yeah, if you're talking about running Linux on a Mac, virtual machines, no reason to partition. So
we'll talk if we have time today. I'm going to pick Michael's brain on virtualization and maybe do a slightly deep dive into that.
The one thing I will say, if you're talking about splitting partitions on a Mac, one thing you do see people do is they will install multiple versions of Mac OS on a single Mac. And so they'll partition their Mac and install, like, say right now, Big Sur is the new upcoming version. And so they'll install Big Sur right next to Catalina or Mojave so that they can basically do their, you work on a stable machine and then boot it into Big Sur and then
see if they can break it.
Well, a lot of times they're development builds. So these are developers doing that. So they'll be running it on, they'll be like using features that are going to be released in the fall and trying to get their software ready to run on that new OS in the fall. But you don't want to lose a machine. You know, if you don't have two machines or you want to be able to quickly jump back and forth, sometimes those beta OSs can be a little unstable. So having the ability to dual boot is pretty handy. But that's two versions of Mac OS. That's not Mac OS and Linux.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Hopefully that answers your question.
If not, I'm sure you'll get a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So Tiago Cardosa, sorry. What is your trick to memorize all the acronyms? So I'm assuming that's directed at me since I'm the one constantly correcting Mike. One, if I don't know it, I look it up and then correct him just to make me seem smarter when I'm answering questions. Mm-hmm. True. The second thing is because we need to spell all these things out when we're writing the books, I'm the one that's doing the spelling out. And so by writing and repetition, I just mainly memorize these things. Michael memorizes things, on the other hand, simply because he can't not do it. So there you go.
I memorize a lot of random stuff. But if you ask me to recall them, like, in a test situation, I'd probably choke.
So I love this one. P saying, I didn't think Michael Smyer is a real person because it sounded like a character Mike Meyers created from his name, like Mike Strami.
No, I'm real. Mike has created characters in the past, but no, I'm a real one.
This is true.
Yeah.
Once again, things jumped. Oh boy, I jumped seriously here. Okay, connections on. Cindy asks, connections such as RG6 or RGBHV on the exam. I assume A+ exam and no.
Yeah.
RJ45, certainly RJ11 for your Ethernet and modem connections.
DSL.
Pardon?
RJ11, DSL for RJ11 as well.
And DSL, right, of course.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll see an RG59.
Yeah, that's just.
It's just a coaxial connection.
Yeah, RG59 and RG6. RG59, I think, is just a thinner version of RG6.
Yeah. So.
The cheaper patch cable that you might run from the wall to the modem.
So here's an interesting question from Theodore. Welcome, by the way. Can you hack or do some type of attack just by having someone's IP address?
I mean, sure. It's
yes.
Anytime you know how to find somebody, you can, in theory, hack it. If that machine's, behind firewalls and up to date, it should be very difficult.
Right. So the only time you would do this is if you were actually attacking somebody on your own network.
Even over the internet, you could.
Right.
It just depends on what's between you and how open they are.
Gotcha.
But usually if you're dealing with a host on the internet, not a server, but like someone else's, laptop or something like that, they're probably going to be behind a NAT connection. So they're going to be sharing that IP address with a whole bunch of other people. So that's going to make it harder. But yeah, if there are techniques like anytime, but so that's kind of
right
meandering way to say it.
So yes is the answer, although it's not something you normally do.
Yeah.
So here's a question for me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, Art, I'll do Art's question first. Art Sim asks, are there easy ways to memorize port numbers? Flashcards, write them down, use them.
Use them. That's my trick.
Yeah, I mean, that's about as good as I can tell.
Use them enough till you've memorized them. And then you'll forget them again once you stop using them. And then you'll look it up again and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's that thing.
Yeah, and Tiago has a follow-up question about how to memorize all the acronyms for A+. And here I'm gonna fall right back on what Mike Meyers says, and that is don't. If you know what they do, that's good enough. I mean, the difference between HTTP and HTTPS?
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to remember that it's hypertext transport protocol
secured
over SSL or TLS. It's not relevant as long as you know that's the secure way to do a web page. So, Tiago, you don't have to memorize spelling them all out. Andrew Hutz asks me, are you involved with the Society for Creative Anachronism? Those of you who have been following the live stream for a while would know that the answer on that is yes. I've been in the SCA it's a medieval and Renaissance recreation society. So we kind of create an idealized version of the Middle Ages. We all dress up in costume, we do feasts, we fight using real armor and swords that are, there are live steel swords that are used, but most of us will use rattan, which has the same kind of weight of steel. And we basically don't cut ourselves apart. We simply beat each other up. So it's very exciting. These days, I'm more involved in the musical aspects. I've been a bard and troubadour for many, many years, and regularly perform around fires and in tournaments, and just because you can't shut me up sometimes. So there you go. So yes, very much involved in the Society for Creative Anachronism. And it's a lot of fun, and another way of being a complete geek that doesn't involve computers. So
I am not involved in the SCA. I'm not that kind of geek. The closest I get is taking pictures at Renaissance Fair.
And see, the funny part is Michael and I are almost identical in size and build. And so since I actually have a dedicated closet and a half in my house just to costuming, and 2 trunks full in the attic, I think I might have a little bit of a problem here.
What he's not saying is that often that, outside of a stream like this, it's not uncommon to see him in costume.
Well, because my garb
on the meeting.
This is true. This is true. Oh, and so to finish that thought, Michael, when he goes to Renaissance Festival, will basically just take his pick from my garb and dress up 1 day a year or 2 days a year. So, but he doesn't live it like I do.
Not at all.
All right, so what do we have here? Henry Bruzo, welcome. Tolowit has some good advice on memorizing ports. So good stuff.
Let's see, one question from Theodore here. Can you visit a web page that is IPv6 if you have the IPv4 address? That's a little confusing. Visit a page that is IPv6 if you have if you only have an IPv4 address and that's an IPv6 address. You have to have tunnels set up between you and that machine. So yes, you can, but there has to be some sort of bridge, a tunneling bridge to get you from IPv4 to IPv6. So,
gotcha.
And if you run both at the same time, we call that dual stack. So,
which is how most of us run these days.
Yeah, that dual stack is very, very common. But yeah, you can jump from IPv4 to IPv6, but there has to be a tunnel somewhere in the network between you and it.
So Charles has a follow-up question. He says, type verifier in your Win search box. In the Total Sim simulator, I was given a simple everyday problem of listing all the driver signatures on a device. How can I print this from verifier? So I assume you're typing that, Michael?
Yeah, I'm seeing how that works. Let's see if I can spell it out. Oh, I see. Okay. Interesting. It's not. This looks like an app that's been around for a little while. There are so many apps that have been.
Other people are having out that you're a real person as well, Michael.
Oh, they're doubting or they're believing that I'm a real person?
They're believing now because you're finally here online and not just a figment of Mike's imagination.
Gotcha. I've been on 1 or 2 others. Interesting. App user verifier.
Well, Michael is looking that up. I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. Falak has some. Falak goes deep. So you ready for this one?
Go.
Does periodical authentication in CHAP occur before previous session expires or after the session expires? Is it like renewal of IP by DHCP?
We have to defer to you on that one because you've been deeper in the security plus stuff lately.
I don't know. I have to look stuff like that up. I don't know, Falak.
Yeah, I can't tell you off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Okay, so
I'm trying to figure out this.
can you VM a Mac is on Windows? Cindy has.
VM a Mac on Windows, same problem. It's
Yeah, no,
you,
not
you yeah, it's not you. I'm sure there's a way to do it technically, but again, you are not legally permitted to run Mac OS on any non-Apple hardware. That's including in a virtual machine as well. So
right.
um, that's
That's
I've never really seen anyone really try it either. Again, you see the Hackintosh community tends to be pretty popular because they want to be able to run Mac OS on hardware that they want to build, but you lose some stuff when the virtual machine not as common.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Brendan asks if we're ready for the Microsoft Flight Simulator. I haven't. I don't have a joystick anymore. I do at the office.
I feel like I should. So Ford, you remember Ford? Ford just sent me a picture. I wonder if he'd be okay with his 5-year-old son flying it looks like a Cessna.
Cool.
So I have not played it. It looks amazing. I actually still have my original joystick from the first game I bought for my first computer back in '96, which was Microsoft Flight Simulator 5.1 for DOS.
And the secret part is he probably still has that computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm not as much of a geek as Michael is.
Oh, what do you mean?
Peter Hunt says, hi, good afternoon. Hey, Peter, good to see you.
Oh, I have some old stuff still floating around the apartment. There's the original disc.
Wow.
So I don't know. I need to play the new one. So
what else we got here?
I also have Descent 2 sitting next to it. So.
I never got into Descent. It's made me ill.
Yeah, it does that. Oh,
yeah.
It will make you nauseous, no doubt.
So Charles is following up again on the Mac and Linux question. He says, I don't necessarily want to run Mac and Linux side by side. I want to set up a partition to say run Linux and work with its CLI, and then another partition to help me get acquainted with the Mac. So the key here is you need to start with the Mac, and then you can use virtual machines to create all of the Linux boxes you want. So
I give you a secret, like the Mac terminal is essentially a Linux terminal. If you're comfortable with a Mac terminal, you will be comfortable in a Linux terminal. There are things in Linux that are different, such as package management, software management, and a little bit of the file system layout, but the kind of core moving around, what the shell looks like, is the same. In fact, Macs right now boot up and they use ZSH. Linux, same. So all that stuff is pretty much the same between them. But if you want to get comfortable in a Linux environment, pure Linux environment, install Linux VM on your Mac. That would be the easiest way to do it.
So Tolowit points out that, of course, and I should have said this when we talked about using an IP address for attacking, obviously denial of service and distributed denial of service attacks.
Oh yeah.
You can do this by IP, and yeah, they can done well. Well, is that the right term? Done successfully. Done successfully. Yeah, they can do some serious damage. So, yeah. Taylor Brook, hi guys, sneaking in at work. Shh, we will tell. Falak, you should be able to get an extra 30 minutes. Yes, if English isn't, if you're taking the in your case, the Security Plus exam in a language that's not your mother tongue, you can just ask for that extension like Alice is doing, and you get an extra 30 minutes. So definitely take advantage of it, right? Why not? Andrew Hutz, I knew it. I just recently got involved with a local barony in the East Kingdom. So I'm in Anstiora, which is Texas and Oklahoma. So that's my kingdom. And then, of course, Houston is the barony of Stargate, which we had that name before the movie, okay? Don't make fun of us. Okay.
No one's making fun of you, Scott.
Steve Hickson, hi, I'm in my CC. Do you know anyone who's hiring? My CC.
Not ringing bells.
Cisco certification?
Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, if you haven't booked your exams, you should definitely do. So the Renaissance festivals that we go to are, the big one here is called the Texas Renaissance Festival. It's in Plantersville, Texas, known for the Texas Renaissance Festival, and that's it. There's also a couple of other fairs in and around Texas, because Texas is huge. So there's Scarborough Fair, which is up just south of Dallas, which I hear is just a lovely fair, but I for some reason never get up there because it conflicts with things that I'm almost always doing in the SCA. So there you go. So really, Andre de Gouillard, he does North American 1800 to 1900 reenactment stuff. So very cool. Very cool. Oh, CC, community college. That would make more sense. Anybody hiring? If you should be able to find like help desk type jobs, because these are being done remotely. Yeah, I mean, a lot of life in the US at least is kind of sort of pretending to be normal, even though it's not. So yeah, look, Indeed.com, you can try that. Yeah. What else we got here going on? Flock has not booked his exam yet. Garba Muhammad, hello. Gamshab, excellent. Good to see you, welcome. Official Roy Fu, I have a cram test book for Security Plus certification. He's planning to take it in about 3 months. Do I need more time? And do you guys think that will be enough time to study that book and pass the test? 3 months, you should be able to, if you spend enough time on it, you should definitely be able to pass the Security Plus exam. That's a very doable, like an hour a day or something like that, and do it within a couple of months. Sure, no problem. Flight simulators, yes. Can you format? Okay, so Gabshem has a question. Can you format a computer using DOS commands?
Sure, it just won't run Windows afterwards.
Yeah, you definitely can. You can partition and format a computer using the command line. In fact, a lot of us still use a command line to do that. Easy enough to do. The format is just the format command. So yeah. Try this right now. Go to your command line and type format space C:, and press enter. I'm kidding. Don't do this. What else we got going here? Lots of discussion. Fellow had actually answered that question too.
Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's definitely getting into the Mac. That is kind of one of the downsides to the Apple side of things. It's like their big selling point is that they sell the whole widget, that their software is integrated really tightly with their hardware. And so, unlike the Windows world where, it's kind of anything goes, Apple makes their money by selling hardware. So that's why they restrict Mac OS to just that hardware, because that's where they make their cash. They don't actually, you can't actually buy Mac OS by itself. And actually they did license it for other computers way back in the mid 90s when they were desperately trying to do anything to make money. That was actually one of the first things Steve Jobs killed when he came back in '97, was the Mac OS licensing program.
Gotcha.
So it is written into their DNA, as it were.
Nice. Yeah. So his computer career was what Steve Hickson was talking about. So he's just getting into his computer career.
Okay.
Get a certification under your belt and look for a job. I mean, I won't get on Mike's high horse on that. But yeah, there are definitely jobs out there, especially in entry-level things, just to get you started. And if you can't find a quick entry-level job because you don't have experience yet, then volunteer. Yeah. Volunteer at a church or a community center or something of that nature. Volunteer at a library. They use computers too. And so being able to have some kind of experience under your belt, volunteer experience, works just as well as paid experience. So just show that you can do the job.
And be willing to do some of the kind of menial stuff. You're not going to be able to walk in and be administering millions of dollars worth of servers. Especially on these entry-level stuff, be happy to do take inventory of the laptops and things like that. Show that you're diligent and that you can be relied upon. And a lot of that menial stuff will make a good impression on people above you. I actually saw a posting the other day on the sysadmin forum on Reddit about that very topic. So just
nice. So Falak asks, should a vulnerability scan assessment be completed before completing the risk assessment, or is it a good practice but not compulsory? I think of it really as part of the same process, even though we split it out and we talk about it in Security Plus. But you're running a vulnerability scan or assessment is part of risk assessment, or is part of that process as you're trying to figure out where the dangers are or the weaknesses are in your networks and systems. Part of the way you can test those systems is through vulnerability scans. So
that's just going to be one aspect of a risk assessment.
Right.
That technical scan, because there's other risks out there, policies and stuff that are just critical. But I think you're right that it's inclusive. You by doing the vulnerability scan, that is part of the risk assessment,
right?
Apart from it.
Taylor Brook asks, speaking of formatting, nice segue, can you use dynamic disks in MBR partition style disks, or are dynamic disks only for GUID partitions?
Dynamic disks go way back. They were, definitely using them on NBRs. Although I don't think I have any dynamic disks in production anymore. But they definitely could. I'd have to look up to see. Actually, I could have sworn they were deprecating dynamic disks or something to that effect. I read, so.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up again. But dynamic disks are quite old and they very much predate GUID disks.
Yep. Aside from teaching A+, I haven't used dynamic disks in a long time because there are just so many better solutions for getting software RAID and we can do all this stuff natively in Windows 10 now anyway. So
yeah, Windows 10, you got storage spaces Windows
Right.
Server, you have storage spaces, which is kind of the new blessed way of doing it in Windows. I have one remaining Windows Server at the office, and it's running, it's using hardware RAID, so Windows doesn't even see it as a, so Windows doesn't even see the individual disks in the array. My other servers are all on either Synology or FreeNAS, so ButterFS and ZFS.
Right. All right, cool.
Yeah.
And Tulowit answered Steve's question a little more as well, saying that he had, when he was in community college, he had a part-time job as on the computer lab. So on the on-campus computer lab. So
oh yeah, definitely.
That's a great way of getting very tight experience. So nice stuff.
And those soft skills of how to deal with users.
Right. So Theodore S, is it unsafe to plug your computer directly into a modem? By which I mean, I assume you mean into a cable modem without going through a router? That's what
I would venture to say, I wouldn't say it's unsafe. It's nice to have a little more separation.
Yeah,
but Windows comes with a solid firewall. But yeah, you are going to be getting the fire hose from.
Yeah, I would feel a lot more safe. I do feel a lot more safe hiding behind a NATed router.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Plugging directly into the internet scares me.
Yeah, if there's any vulnerability, any remotely triggered vulnerability in Windows, you're more vulnerable at that point.
Right.
If you're not behind some other hardware like that. But I think usually like a lot of the modems, also known as CPE or customer premises equipment that you'll get with cable subscriptions, are themselves routers.
Right.
So they're really combo units. So you're already behind a NAT. Although it is kind of important to know that when you're dealing with IPv6 connections on most consumer hardware, every client behind on that network gets a unique IPv6 address that can be. So when they connect out, it's a one-to-one match. But usually they're set up, the firewalls are set up so that any inbound connections can't connect directly to the to you. So from the outside, it looks like NAT. It kind of operates in that way, but it's not, because you're not sharing a single IP address.
Gotcha. So I forgot at the beginning of this to mention that we have, just for you, because you're here today listening to Michael and I chatter and answering your questions, we have specials at totalsim.com. So the special this week is 50% off all of our Total Tester standalone products. So these aren't the bundles, these are the standalone tests. But we have Total Tester practice tests for a whole bunch of certifications, not just the big three from CompTIA. So we've got everything from ITF Plus up through Security Plus, and also CYSA Plus, PenTest Plus, Cloud Plus, and even some AWS practice exams too. And so it's 50% off on all of those. Just use the code MMLive Yellowstone at checkout, and you'll get that discount.
Kathy's having fun with those codes.
He is having fun.
Yeah.
So wow. Since I've got you on the show today, it's always really bugged me the way CompTIA approaches virtualization, virtual machines. It seems like in both A+ and Network Plus that it's almost like hobbyist stuff. You know, yeah, you can because you have some extra RAM, you can just run some virtualization software and then run a version of Linux so that you can say, hey, I did this. So here's my question.
Mhm.
As a systems administrator,
Yeah.
you use virtual machines. That's a question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we have tons of them.
Tons of virtual machines. And are these
Yeah.
I'm just going to download a copy of VirtualBox from Oracle and install the latest version of Ubuntu? Or
Sure.
is there something beyond that?
A little bit of everything, to be honest.
All right.
I use a bunch of them for different tasks. It just depends on the problem I am trying to solve.
All right. So let me ask the question differently then.
Yeah.
What kinds of problems, or what does virtualization solve in our case, a small business network, and why?
I will answer that 1 second. I want to answer Tolowit's question real quick about IPv6 and firewalls. Yeah, the router firewall does do stuff with IPv6. In fact, it is a firewall, which fundamentally what a firewall does is it filters packets. And so what the firewall, most consumer level firewalls do with IPv6 is that if you have a packet inbound coming in from the internet, we say that it will be set up so that it is not allowed through by default. So if it's not part of an existing connection, it's not allowed through. But if you have, let's say you're connecting to a web server to download something or view a website, you're going to create an outbound connection. And then the firewall is going to take note of that. And it's going to say, okay, this connection, this flow is going out to this web server, and it's going to know what the destination IP address was, what your ephemeral port number is, and what the destination port number is, say 443 on the web server. And it's going to take note of that. And then so when a packet comes back from the web server, it's going to see that and say, that's part of this existing connection, and I'm going to let that packet through. But if there was another packet that was destined for your same IP address that was not part of an existing connection, it's just going to drop it. So if someone was trying to see what ports are open by scanning your IP address, all those packets would be dropped. They wouldn't see anything. So yeah, that's what it's going to do in IPv6. Is it's going to and in that way it's going to act like NAT. So NAT's essentially doing the same thing, but we're sharing an IP address. We're just keeping track of the source and destination ports, the IP addresses on both sides in a table, but instead of swapping out the IPs when we come back through, we just allow the packet to flow through with IPv6. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit more. But on the...
You already said yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah. I like to go into depth on things, what can I say? But
so,
kind of back to your VM
Hold on.
Yeah.
BIH Wolf 2002. You'll be taking your A+ exam 101 in an hour. Good luck.
Yes, definitely. Good luck on that.
Got this.
Yeah, no, don't stress.
Yeah.
You know the stuff you've been studying.
Yep, it's all good.
Yeah.
All right, so back to my question.
Yeah.
So what do you use the virtualization for?
So kind of here in our network, we use it for a few things. One, the stuff that you're most directly familiar with is testing out various operating systems. That would be just downloading Ubuntu, installing an old copy of Windows or something like that. And that's really handy for doing things or installing newer versions of Windows or clean versions. That's really handy for doing things like screenshots and setting up various labs. So a lot of the screenshots you see in the books are actually taken in VMs. That's why they have Scott's most hated username, VM user, in many of them.
True.
So
True.
that's what's going on. So those are all using, I used VMware Workstation for many years on that. A lot of them are using Oracle's VirtualBox these days. But I also use that for doing, again, setting up labs if I need to experiment with something or development work.
So, and this comes into play when you're writing a program or writing programs, then this gives you a safe space to work in, or?
Yeah, exactly. It lets me replicate the environment that the software will eventually run in. So
without having to go live, right?
Yeah. So while we're doing, as we said earlier, that our training hub and our total tester products, they run on an environment called Heroku, which itself is virtualized and all that. But it's all Linux, and we've set up virtual machines through various automation tools to run on our local Macs to let us very quickly, we call it spinning up a machine to be able to run the code and actually develop the software. That's all the kind of stuff we do on my individual machine.
Right.
Then the other thing I use virtualization for is for internal. We have a single vSphere host. So we're just running the basic free version of ESXi, just the hypervisor. Not without, we're a pretty small org, so don't really have the need for all the really cool like vMotion and clustering abilities of it.
So this is.
But that's all this. That's a server that's running in a rack. So
I was about to ask that question. So that's not like your typical PC you bought at Best Buy that you just kind of tossed ESXi in. This is a dedicated server.
Yeah, it's just a little 1U machine. Dell. Incidentally, Dell basically owns more or less VMware. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a lot of craziness in the enterprise software. VMware is just one tool. Those are called a type 1 hypervisor.
Mm-hmm.
I.e., you install it on the computer as its own operating system. In fact, one of the kind of cool things about, and they're generally pretty small. In fact, on our little Dell box at the office, it's running on an SD card inside.
The entire operating system.
Well, the hypervisor
SD card?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that runs on there.
Right. Telowitz right.
Yeah.
1U counts as jargon, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how many people here have actually played with server hardware, but it's 19 inches wide generally. And then they're called U's, which is a rack unit. And I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how many inches it is. Do you remember, Scott?
That's a couple. I don't know.
It's like that. It's not super thick.
It's a U.
It's a U. It's a 1U. So 1U is generally the smallest hardware you're going to have, the thinnest. Mike loves to use the word pizza box, but funny enough, and when I think of the word pizza box, I'm actually thinking of 1990s era workstations, which were about the size of a pizza box.
Pretty deep dish pizza box.
I know. Well, it's Chicago style pizza box. So
there you go. Okay.
But yeah, no. Anyway, so 1U is the thinnest vertically.
Telowitz got the number.
Hardware.
1.75.
1.75. Okay, there you go. You got it. Yeah. And that's what our in-house virtualization host is. I call it VM host.
Gotcha.
And it runs a number of primarily Linux virtual machines. It runs a UniFi controller to handle our Wi-Fi. It runs a GitLab server to handle our version control and issue management for software development. It runs a few different kind of test servers for website development work.
Okay,
it runs our domain controller.
Hold on.
Yeah.
All right. Why are you putting all of these different features into their own VMs?
Because Dudley won't let me buy a different bit of hardware for each one. Slightly in jest. You put it, most applications, servers running like this, most applications don't really want to run on the same operating system with other applications. They tend to have things set up just the way they want to. They're going to have different database servers. They're going to have different libraries. They're going to have different scripting languages, different performance tunings. And even they might have different security requirements as part of the security assessments. Like if you have a whole bunch of stuff, like if you have a public facing website running on a computer and you have your accounting software running on that same computer, if that one computer gets hacked, you're hosed. They're now accessing like the company's books. So right. A lot of it's one kind of how, setting it up so that the software is happy, but two, it's a security thing. You have each one of these different virtual machines is isolated from another one. So if one gets compromised, they can't jump over and get into another one.
Nice. Okay.
And they have different, also different requirements. One might need, 2 cores and a gig of RAM, and another one might need 4 cores and 4 gigs of RAM. So you can kind of tune each one to do what it needs. If you want, Scott, I can kind of bring up some of the back end and show it.
Sure.
Sure.
That would be interesting to me. I don't know. Everybody else? Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's see some working VMs here that aren't just a copy of Linux.
Well, let me see.
What do we got?
I have a couple here. So I will minimize this and minimize this. And then we will screen share. I'm just going to screen share the whole desktop.
And Mike Meyers is in the house.
Yep.
Say hi, Mike.
So.
All right, what do we got here?
So this is, these are all going to look like websites because they are, essentially. So I mentioned GitLab. This is a project. This is software tracking stuff. So kind of showing you. So this is just manages all of our source code stuff for various things. So that's GitLab. That's running in one virtual machine. Here is UniFi. So not much going on at the office these days due to COVID, but this normally would show me.
This is our
everyone. This is our Wi-Fi system. So, so you can see, we have a couple of access points at the office.
Yeah.
And we have a printer that's online. Stuff like that.
Can you make any of this stuff bigger?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Yep.
So you can see we have a printer online. We have some access points. So I can, show you the Wi-Fi experience for the printer is 96 right now. That's, it is what it is.
Right.
So, but this is all running on a Linux VM. Kind of cool. You can see what the network looks like as far as our kind of the signals in the area. I can even take a look here and take a look at our neighboring access points.
Neighboring access points?
Yeah, so this is kind of fun. These are all of the access points that our Wi-Fi has seen in the last hour.
Huh.
And you'll see like every hotspot that's come through near, and they're pretty sensitive. Apparently someone is, get the hell off my Wi-Fi. But what's fun is there's a road that's not too far out from, we're not too far from a road, and you'll see that this is the manufacturer Ford Motor. So a lot of these are cars that are just driving by or Denali Wi-Fi. So a lot of these are just cars that are driving by the road that
are connected,
or not connected, but are broadcasting just strong enough that our Wi-Fi can hear it and can see it. Really weak. You can see that it's negative 92 dBm. So just really down there in the noise. But
nice.
It's kind of fun to see all that. But you know, I know that we're not really here to look at Wi-Fi stuff, but that's all. That's all.
But that's its own separate Linux.
Yeah.
Box that's running all that.
Yeah. Or something like this. This is Zabbix. This is a little kind of in-house management or
network monitoring
software.
Network
monitoring software.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do it. Last one day.
Apparently our network is just spinning.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. I don't know why that's spinning up, but we can take a look at what those are actually running on. So here is ESXi. So this is the hypervisor, or the controller for the the control interface for the hypervisor. If I were to actually go and
make it bigger.
Make it bigger? Okay.
Please.
Hopefully that helps.
Yep, there we go.
Okay. So you'll see that it is just a little Dell PowerEdge R340, which probably won't mean much to most of you, but it's a relatively inexpensive Dell server. It's got 6 virtual CPUs, so it's a 6-core Xeon in there and 64 gigs of RAM. So
a mere 64 gigabytes. Gosh.
I mean, as this stuff goes, it's not much. I'm sure that a number of you have 64 gig, maybe 1 or 2 of you have 64 gigs in your desktops out there, even though most of us have 16, somewhere between 8 and 32.
Yeah, I'm running.
So these guys can go up into not this particular machine, but you can see terabytes of RAM on some of these.
Wow.
Yeah, but here's the actual virtual machines.
Wait, you have 21 virtual machines in here?
Yeah, so most of these are powered down.
Oh, because you never know when you'll need a copy of Windows 2000.
Yeah, so some of these are legacy, and you'll notice that it's hard to see, but they're not actually running. So I'm going to go ahead and filter these by powered on VMs. So these are the ones that are actually running.
Wow.
So
this is so not the CompTIA A+ or even Net+ discussion. This is like for real using virtual machines.
Yeah. And so here I can show you, like, you'll probably recognize them. These are the names of the virtual machines. I like to name my virtual machines the same name as the host name. So
yeah, this pet animal names, but that's what I'm in charge, and I'm not.
You'll notice that most of mine are Linux. Here. There is a Windows. This is a server 2019. This Windows 7 is for a legacy application that someone actually will remote desktop into. Well, take you a look into one. Let's look at GitLab here. So this is what the actual VM looks like. on the back end. You'll see here's kind of some of the details on it. We give it 8 gigs of RAM, 40 gig hard drive, 2 virtual CPUs.
Nice.
Don't think I'm releasing anything. And then here's what the actual terminal looks like. So that's what it looks like from there.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to, I could log in from here.
Show us your password.
No. So
you're now logged into the server directly.
So I'm now logged into the server directly.
Nice. So here's,
and you can do things like that, but I rarely, if I'm doing maintenance on this, I never come in through here. Pretty much if there's something wrong, I'll come in through here. Generally the way I do it is I'll use a tool like this. So we'll do.
Wait, that looks like an 8-bit video game.
Yeah, I know. So we're gonna, again, so here's that same server.
Right.
But we'll connect in, and I'm using SSH keys to authenticate, so I don't have to type in a password.
Nice.
So
this of course would be putting practical use to a lot of the stuff that you will be learning in Network Plus. Those of you out there.
Yeah, and this is definitely all very Network Plus.
To be fair, Michael is going, this is network administrator stuff and systems administrator stuff. So it's beyond Network Plus. So, but this is when you take what you're learning in Net Plus and A Plus to a lesser degree, and then put it into practical use to run a network. All of it translates beautifully, and you just layer on top. But A Plus and Network Plus and Security Plus give you the basics you need to be able to do all of this stuff.
One kind of cool thing about ESX is that it makes it very easy to, they give you this nice visual way to see how all the VMs are connected to the network.
Okay.
And every hypervisor is going to do something similar. They're going to create a virtual switch. So this is a switch, just like you would plug anything into.
Oh, so it's showing what's the colored things are actually plugged in?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So you can see, like, I can click on, oh, that just takes me right back over to there. I'll bring it back here.
Don't blow it up, Michael.
I'm not. So you'll see that these are all different ones that are plugged in. Right now, the ones that are off are off. And right here it says physical adapters. So
they're all splitting 1 gigabit connection.
Yes. And so our use, we're small organization, so this is not a high bandwidth situation. And ideally, you would be doing bonded connections to a machine like this so that you have failover. If one of the connections go down, it would automatically fail to the next.
Okay.
But when you're small enough, you don't have to worry as much about those kind of things.
So I hear people sometimes claim that bonding two physical NICs together provides greater speed.
Yes and no.
All right.
I do have a number of connections that are bonded together, primarily our video and our file servers. But that is a good point to bring up. If you are dealing with what Cisco calls Ether Channel 803.AD, I think is the name of the protocol that handles the bonding at the Ethernet level. A single connection so if you're talking about like a file server, so if you have one machine that's connecting, so if you bond like say 4 1 gig connections,
right,
and you have another machine that's, let's just say 10 gig. So the bonded connections add up to 4, and then you have another machine that's technically 10, and then you start copying a file from the server that has the 4 bonded connections. Intuitively, you would think that it would actually be, you would be able to copy it at 4 gigabits per second.
right, but
That's not what happens.
right.
It'll copy at 1 gig per second, because the system, most of these will not be able to split that connection over the 4 links. Each flow, as we say, so a single connection, a single flow of traffic,
Right.
will go over 1 connection. So if you do set up another copy, then that one could also would set up another flow, and then that could copy at a full 1 gig.
So if you were trying to copy, say, 4 giant video files at the same time,
then you would get the full bandwidth.
gotcha. Okay,
Exactly.
cool.
So something to keep in mind if you're talking about doing bonding connections, and if it doesn't work quite the way you think, you're like, why isn't this working? That's why. Because it's not the same thing as using one big link.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it does make it is a good practice still, because it makes the connection more reliable over time, because if one fails, you still have the other one up, and
Right.
it'll always be available. And you can service more machines connecting to that with full speed. So
Nice. Okay.
but as far as on virtual machines, that's kind of the same thing. We have VMs. We also have storage. So here I have, this is actually a RAID 10 array that's underneath.
Yeah.
Just
So it's not a single 2 terabyte drive. It's
no. It's actually a
4 or
it's
5.
four 1 terabyte drives.
Gotcha. Okay.
So again, we're using virtualization at this level for dealing with individual applications. But there's something kind of fun. If you've never seen it, saw that there is a domain controller in here. Yes, I know they should be in redundant, but this is what it looks like. So that is what my domain controller looks like.
Wow. Okay. So on
There is no desktop. This is Windows Core.
So on Wednesday, I think, or maybe Monday, there was some discussion in the chat about why I'm saving the command line for last, because that's the hardest. See, here's where it just gets real, where the pretty pictures go away and your entire interface is a command line.
Yeah. All of these VMs are like that.
Yep.
They're all command line.
Nice.
They're all terminal. The reason you do that is, one, you're never going to you don't actually use the computer, the server that way. You're running these applications. You're running GitLab. You're running Zabbix. You're running Unify or UNMS or any of these other things.
Yeah.
Or WordPress or whatever you're trying to do. The only reason the command line's there is for administrative purposes. So these big heavy GUIs mean you need to have big fancy video cards. It means you have to have gigs of software running on the server that is, one, taking up space, 2, takes up memory, 3, is the more software you have, just like when you're talking about risk assessment, that creates a larger, what we call surface area. So it's an attack surface area. So there can be bugs in that software, in all that GUI stuff that could make you vulnerable. So the easiest way to make it secure is just not to have it.
Okay.
And so, and as an administrator, you know, we're comfortable, you know, mucking around in the command line anyway. We kind of prefer it in a lot of ways. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
you know, I can run this, I can dedicate more of the resources of an individual VM to the actual application that I'm running, and not to running the GUI.
Gotcha.
So that's what's kind of a peek behind the curtain on that stuff. I can show you, if you're curious, the kind of how the development side of this things work. Let's see.
Briefly, I think we're pretty deep in it right now. So
okay, I don't know if I'm blew everyone's, you know, over everyone's head. There's some graphing from Zabbix.
And what does this tell you?
This is just the web server and what's going on with it. Things like requests per second and the number of active workers, and just kind of keeping an eye on things.
Gotcha.
Stuff like that.
So this would be a way quickly to see unusual usage and that sort of thing.
Yeah, like if it's acting really sluggish, you know, you can kind of keep an eye on it. It's essentially setting a form of a baseline and recording over time.
Gotcha.
So you can see like, oh wow, like suddenly it spiked, and you see these. You're talking about DDoSs. You get these scans that, you know, come through, and they'll just sit there and hammer on your server. And I'll just watch it, and then they'll sit there and just spam against the login, trying every single login they can. And it is really annoying. You'll watch your CPU use go up and your memory use go up, and at worst, it can actually cause your server just to like crash.
So that would be a successful DDoS.
Yeah.
A good one.
But, yeah.
I misspoke earlier.
But we were talking about the development stuff, so I don't care if everyone can make that a little bit bigger. By the way, I'm running what's called if my shell here looks very colorful, it is what's called I am running ZSH. So
You're running
the Unix world. In the Unix world, the command line is what's called a shell.
Right.
This window you're seeing is called a terminal. I'm running one called iTerm2, and a terminal acts essentially as like one of those old dumb terminals from way back in the 80s. But
way back in the 80s, you mean in my misspent youth?
Oh yeah, no, that's basically what this software is. This software is just a way to render text. And the text it's showing me is what's called ZSH, which is a modern Unix shell. And the shell is the thing that you type commands at. So that is the actual command line, is what's in the Unix world is called a shell. Another very popular one, the one you see most on in Linux, is called bash. But there are other ones, like you can have fish.
Wow, can't see that at all.
Yeah, see. Here's fish. And I've heavily customized my shell, so you can see that I got kind of things like that. And it's all very colorful.
Nice.
Really kind of, as a quick aside, you can even do things like PowerShell. So here is Microsoft's PowerShell running on a Mac. So
nice.
Yeah. So that's PowerShell right there. But kind of back to the virtual machine stuff. We run one of the things we have set up here is called Vagrant. I don't know if there's any software developers in the audience, but Vagrant is a tool for automating virtual machines. And so we have a little let's see if I can, if it's here, we should see should be a vagrant file. There it is, vagrant file right here. That little file right here means that when I run the command vagrant, by the way, you see how it shows halt there?
Right.
I have a little plugin that's part of ZSH that will remember previous commands and will bring them up again very quickly. So it makes remembering things like if I needed to sync a bunch of stuff to AWS, it remembers big ones like that. So much faster. But in this case, we want to run what's called vagrant up. So give it a second here. And what this is doing is Vagrant itself is just an application. It's free, actually, free software out there. And it controls virtual machine hypervisors. In this case, VirtualBox. And we can specify a bunch of stuff in that vagrant file, and it'll actually go out on the internet and download, in this case, Ubuntu Bionic 64. And it's already set up with, it's a virtual machine that's already set up with some basic configuration.
Yeah.
And then we have a whole bunch of other stuff in that file, which we configure things like mapping of ports, mapping of directories, so that we can have like a directory that has source code in it will then appear in the virtual machine. And so that's what it's doing right now. It's just making sure that the ports are set up. There it is, mapping our directories into the virtual machine. And so now it's actually running.
So just for the record, when we ran through this earlier today, it took 31 seconds. So that's why we were kind of going, anytime now, come on. So a minute 14.
It was paused before, but now I had shut it down is what happened.
Gotcha.
When I closed it. So that's why it took a little bit longer to come up. But here is VirtualBox itself running. And I don't know if you can see right here, it says running. But you'll notice there's no window for the actual virtual machine, and I can quit this and it's still running.
Okay.
In fact, you can see, let's see if I can see it in here. It's bouncing all around, but there is a VirtualBox in here. AUX grep. Should be there. Yep. So you can see VirtualBox. It is running on my system. So now, how do we actually get into it? We run vagrant SSH. And
so you're just going to do an SSH into it.
Yeah. And so now we're connected into it. So this is actually a virtual machine running on my local machine. And then it's already configured with the software to do what we need it to do. And then I can show you localhost. It's actually set up to run on port 5000. And so there it is. So that's our training hub that you're seeing, but it's running, and then there's the actual connections. But it's running as a virtual machine.
Gotcha.
So
this is
and then we edit the source code from here. And so that's the way it all works. So
can you go out of screen share?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's my screen, because I hadn't done anything aside from talk.
Oh, okay.
It was very disconcerting. So that's all cool.
Yeah.
Right? And way deeper than the typical dive into virtualization that you see on A+ or even Network+.
Yeah.
But definitely a glimpse into a world of network administration and the real world use of virtualization in modern networks. So how does virtualization relate to the cloud?
The cloud is virtual. The cloud is virtual machines running on trillion-dollar companies' hardware.
So
basically.
Okay, so when we do stuff like we want to host or do something on AWS, what's happening there?
There's a few different things, but fundamentally, you are spinning up a virtual machine on a server in a data center somewhere. The same thing. The same thing you just saw me do with ESX on a very tiny, microscopic ant contemplating an elephant scale. The cloud is that, but globe spanning big. But you can do the same thing. You can just spin up, you can just create a virtual machine the same way. I can even show one here on AWS. So this is kind of the same thing, going to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit. Probably not the best security thing. I know it's tiny. Let's see if we can make it big enough here.
Right.
So we have a web server on AWS. And we'll take a look. EC2 is the name of the, that's trying not to show off too much here. EC2.
Passwords here, come on.
No, there's no passwords, but all sorts of stuff and IDs and stuff show up. This is a virtual machine.
Luckily, we're not recording or anything, so nobody can replay.
Yeah, no one can see this, right? This is a virtual machine. It runs the website. It's just a Linux machine, like any other. And it's running a hypervisor called HVM instead of ESX. But what's cool about this is, whereas we had a little had that little 6-core machine,
right?
Can kind of step you through if no one's ever played with AWS here. First off, these are what's called AMIs, Amazon Machine Images. You can think about them as they're your operating system. And you have ones you've probably heard of. There's Ubuntu. There's Windows. You have ones that are specially configured for things like deep learning. But we'll just go with a basic one. We'll do what's called Amazon Linux, which is I think based off CentOS these days. I can't remember.
Which came
doesn't really matter, but one, you select what kind of CPU you want. I don't know how many are familiar with ARM. Yes, if you are, that is the same architecture that is running your iPhone or Android phone, and that is the same architecture that Apple is switching all of their machines to. So Amazon has their own ARM chips called Graviton 2, and you can use those. In this case, we'll look at the x86, aka Intel and AMD, which you're familiar with. And so we can select that, and let's take a look at what kind of machines we want. So when you're doing AWS, you select a type, what they call an instance type, which is a virtual machine. And they're pre-configured with certain specs. So like these little nano ones, you can see it's got 1 CPU core and half a gig of RAM, and the network performance is kind of low. By the way, this free tier eligible, when you first sign up for AWS, as you can read here, they'll give you some free hours to play around with it. But as you go down, you can see that they start growing. Just keep in mind, this is CPUs and this is memory. This is a 24x large, so you can get 96 CPUs and 384 gigs of RAM there. You can see these are all the general purpose ones. So that one has 64 CPUs and half a terabyte of RAM. This one has 96 CPUs and 768 gigs of RAM. So you can get some pretty massive stuff. You can even get ones that are down here for that are running on individual computers without any without anyone else on them. You have ones with like 100 gig internet network connections on them. You can get ones that have like tons of memory.
I think we're getting the idea.
Yeah. You can get ones that have a ton of GPUs or ASICs. Yeah, GPUs. But this stuff will cost a ton of money. Like $10,000 a month? Sure, no problem. Easy.
Gotcha.
But once you get that, you can select it, and then you can just configure it, and you can say where you want it, and all these kind of other stuff. And then in the end, you'll end up with the storage is actually configured separate, so you can create basically an SSD, and you tell it how big you want it, and you can get it pretty giant if you want. So, cool. And that's what you're doing in Amazon.
Right.
In our case, we just have a little. This is the A means AMD, medium means 4 gigs of RAM. So that's what that does. But what's kind of interesting is you actually have all sorts of other services that aren't just straight virtual machines. You can do things like S3, which is essentially a giant hard drive, an unlimited hard drive there. CloudFront, which is a content delivery network. So that's where they have servers all around the world. And when you connect to download something, it'll connect to your local closest physical server. And then that server will either have a copy of it on hand, or it'll go all the way back to kind of the source and send it to you and then hold a copy on it. So you can do things like RDS and have virtual databases in the cloud as well. So, and all of this stuff relies on virtual machines in the background.
Gotcha. That's cool.
It's pretty amazing. You can do, like, you want to do machine learning?
No, not really.
Here you go. You want to do you want to set up a video site and a live stream? You got all the services right there.
Or you can just run Zoom.
Yeah. So mind you, like, the one thing to keep in mind when you're talking about stuff like this is all of these different services, the more of them you use, the more locked in you get to using this particular product. So yeah. If you're using, CloudFront and S3, and you have terabytes and terabytes or petabytes of data there. Okay, yeah. So anyway, if you have all those stuff, as you're using all that stuff, it's just fun to play with. Keep in mind. So go ahead and stop it right there.
Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully, let Scott breathe.
That's awesome. That's awesome. No, so when we touch on virtualization and the cloud in Network Plus, now you get a look behind the curtain at what's really happening and where we're going to go with our Network Plus certification. And if you're going into network administration, that you would then have to step behind the curtain, essentially, like Michael does and has shown us today. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no, there's so much stuff out there, so much stuff to learn continuously.
So the big question that came up as I was just watching stuff scrolling by, Mario and Tulowit want to know if the Raspberry Pi could run that Amazon Linux ARM version.
Maybe, but there's really no reason to.
They were having fun.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm just kind of scrolling back up on questions. Mike came in, said hello. People chatted with him for a while. That's nice.
Okay. All right.
So, and where are you? Oh, how far are you headed? Mike is going, people were scared by your background. They're like, what's all that white stuff? Yes.
The snow?
Yes. Although, wow, okay. All right, so it's mainly people were just chatting.
Okay, yeah.
It's exactly what you should do. So that's very fun. If you guys have other questions, specific questions on either stuff that Michael covered or on anything else, we still have a few minutes left. Okay, somebody answered, yeah, how can virtualization be enabled in a PC's firmware? Oh, that's interesting. And as Alice responded through a BIOS setting, yes. There's also, it's not on any exam, but tell us a little bit about the Windows Linux sublayer.
WSL, Windows subsystem for Linux.
Right. What I meant to say.
Real quick on the virtualization of the BIOS. What you're actually doing there is you're enabling CPU features to work with virtualization software. So modern hypervisors expect a couple of CPU instructions that are available in Intel and AMD chips. And that's what that CPU or that little switch in the BIOS does, is it turns that on and off.
Gotcha.
You don't technically have to have that to virtualize. You can't, software can virtualize a machine without those, but that's what's going on there. As far as the WSL stuff, I can show you a little bit about it if you want. Let's see, we'll bring up
Dr. Quinn thinks you should have your own weekly show.
Okay. Well, thank you.
As you can tell, Michael can wax poetic about the geekiest things.
Can everyone see that? There. Let's see.
2:54 p.m.
Okay, so this is a Windows 10 laptop I have here. Can bring this up, make that a bit bigger. So this is my Windows terminal. Which if you haven't installed it, you definitely should. It's way better than the old junky Windows command line software. Incidentally, those same things I said about Windows has been rewriting their entire command line system, by the way. So
Microsoft.
What?
Microsoft has been.
Yeah, Microsoft has been rewriting the command line system in Windows. So you can download the Windows terminal from the Microsoft store for free. But Windows Subsystem for Linux, or WSL, is a, let's say WSL. These are, it is a way, it is actually a very lightweight virtual machine that can be installed and activated on Windows that lets you run Linux as a shell right on Windows. And in fact, you'll see right here, it says Ubuntu and Kali Linux. And yeah, that is Ubuntu and Kali Linux, and they are installed on my computer. In fact, I'll show you. If I do right here, I can bring up one of these. So I'll bring up Ubuntu. And so there is Ubuntu. Again, I have customized my shell.
You and your command lines.
Yeah, no, it just, and in fact, you'll see, like, before I hit ls, so you can see this is my home directory, a little bit messy, but I'll type ls, and there it is. That's the same, those are the same files and folders
But just
as Windows.
Yeah.
So that is actually, but this is actually a virtual machine.
Gotcha.
Which is interesting, but where it kind of gets a little bit, by the way, CD by itself, if you just type CD and then press enter, it will take you back to your home directory, which is indicated by a little tilde there. So right. This is my Linux home directory, so there's nothing in it. But I can create a file, and so there's that. And the way Windows lets you actually access it, it's kind of cool. I can run, that's explorer.exe. So yeah, that is Windows Explorer, and I can do that and open up a Windows Explorer window on my Ubuntu home directory.
So it's tightly integrated, is what you're saying.
It's very tightly integrated. What you're seeing here, in fact, take a look, is, sorry if that's too small. I don't know how to make it too much bigger. There's kind of the normal, there's user, there's etc, there's home, there's proc in there. That's all here. You know, I can do, you know, there's my CPU, it's all in there, just like normal Linux. I can even run htop. So you can see all my cores, but you'll notice it's just showing me my Linux applications.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so that's what's kind of cool. It's actually running on a very lightweight version of, I remember right, does it show up in here? There was an early version that would actually, you could see stuff in here. But yeah, that's Linux. And you can do, it makes it very, very easy to do software development, Linux software development on Windows in here. But you can do things like, you know, ping and all that same stuff that you would do from a Linux machine here. So yeah, that's WSL. And
thank you.
Yeah. So, and then, by the way, this is Hyper-V Manager. So these are some other virtual machines I happen to have on this laptop, but you'll see that the WSL stuff does not show up in here.
Gotcha, because it's not Hyper-V.
It actually is using Hyper-V underneath, but a very lightweight layer. So it's not big and heavy like any one of these VMs. So yeah, you can even do something like this. I can go, if I remember right, yeah, I can type bash from my Windows command line and be in a Ubuntu machine, and then I can type exit, and then I'm back out.
Very cool.
And I know, just to wrap it up, here's old school command line. There's bash, just like before. Can do all that, and then I type exit, and I'm back out at kind of the classic command line that everyone knows. So that's a very, very fast whirlwind tour of WSL.
Very cool. Thank you. And that's Microsoft put that in a couple of
years, right? year or so back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it is super handy. It is like if you want to do Linux stuff on Windows,
yeah,
just turn this on. Don't bother installing VirtualBox and going through all that rigmarole. You can learn a whole lot just playing with WSL. And it's not going to take up all that space and time and effort. That so it's not as heavy as VirtualBox.
The question then, WSL, will it run a visually more pleasing version of Linux, or does it only run the command line?
They're actually working on the ability to run GUI apps with it.
Okay. So right now, though, it's if you want to learn the command line, this would be a...
Yeah, and to be honest, like the reason this exists is for system admins and developers, and we didn't care about the GUI stuff.
Yeah.
If we wanted the GUI stuff, we would have been running Linux in the first place, or Mac.
Because Mac isn't GUI at all. Wait.
Well, no, I mean that's kind of the selling point of a Mac. It's that it is a really nice, refined GUI with a pure Unix underneath. You know, so you can have your email and use it, run Outlook and Word and Adobe Photoshop, and have all that geeky Unix stuff underneath. So
very nice. So I was pointed out a couple of questions that we missed, specifically for you as a follow-up from Telewit.
Okay.
So I'm understanding it correctly to say that an IPv6 router still presents an IP address to the world, and they just call it something different than NAT?
It doesn't present the IP address to the world, if that makes sense. With NAT, the router itself changes the IP address when it's leaving. An IPv6 router does not change it. So it's just passing traffic through without changing it. That's the key thing to keep in mind. NAT means network address translation. It is translating a public IP address to an internal IP address. IPv6, you don't need to do that generally because there's enough IP addresses. So it is simply just passing the packet through. It's routing it. It is being a router.
Right.
Yeah. Now the firewall, it is making decisions to drop or allow a packet through. But again, it's just forwarding it on to the next one or not. That's generally what it's doing. So, and for anyone who digs in deep, yes, there is something called NAT64 out there. So you can NAT in IPv6, and some people advocate it, but generally, it's kind of not really something most people do or want to do, and it causes holy wars and, you know.
So another question on IPv6. Mm-hmm. I know when we initially talked about it, and this goes to another question from Telewit, about IPv6, every device on an IPv6 network gets its own unique IP address, and therefore, is there a need for routing?
Oh yeah, no, you always have to have routing because you need something to move to. The router is what knows where to send the packet. And it is the thing. And, when you're looking at the routing tables, these little simple home routers, you have essentially, there's my inside and then there's my default gateway. As you get up higher and higher, the routing tables get longer and longer, and those routers will know where to send individual packets. They have to go down that way and that way and that way. But yeah, the routers, that is what makes the internet work, is the routers. It's the thing. Those are the devices that know where to send the packet. Otherwise, your machine would have to know every single IP address on the entire internet and where to send it.
Gotcha.
So,
okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hope that answered your questions, Tolowit.
Yeah.
LBOE has a question specifically for you.
Okay.
Says, I've asked Scott, Dave, and popular author Mike Meyers this question before, but I haven't heard Michael's answer. What's your favorite kind of music?
My favorite kind of music. I listen to a lot of indie, a lot of alt, but I enjoy, folk out there, choral music. I enjoy. I, love, classic stuff. So I'm just kind of scrolling through. I have everything from, I got some Japanese house, some Future Islands, but I got Sean Colvin. I have Sam Cooke, Jeff Buckley, Waylon Jennings, Billy Bragg.
Any Daka
Nick Drake, Bombay Bicycle Club. So I'm all over the place.
Nice.
That's kind of where I'm at. Just in a row here. It's the Beatles.
Mario wants you to teach us a class on how to hack with Kali Linux.
Oh, that is something I need to brush up on.
Oh my God, Kali is like.
I am not. My pen testing skills are not that.
Kali is like, you just install it and it's like you just want to go hack somebody. I mean, it's like it's designed from the ground up just to do that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I tend to play more on the defense side than the red teaming.
Right. What else we got here? Nice. People are mentioning their new mentioning their musical tastes as well. And Tolowit was like, did he say folk or filk?
Folk. F-O-L-K.
But filk, of course, being making up lyrics to other tunes that and people
not familiar with the term.
People do filk songs in the SCA all the time. So
oh, gotcha. Okay, so an SCA-ism.
So Brendan, we're running the same special we ran last week on the AMA special deals. So it's the 50% off all the Total Tester standalone products. That's what our salespeople gave me this week. So use code MMLive Yellowstone at checkout. So, but yeah, same deals as last week. Hopefully we'll get them changed up for next week too. That'll be fun. So, but that's just for you guys. And okay, excellent, Brendan.
Dr. Quinn was asking about classical country or bluegrass. Yeah, no, I definitely like all that. Not as much. I don't really generally like the kind of pop country, but some of the older, more popular country, like Jim Garth Brooks, can be enjoyable. Bluegrass is great. Definitely enjoy Mandolin Orange if you haven't heard them. They're really nice. Classical is always nice. Listen to some Bach.
Nice.
I declare Bach is better than Mozart.
And Beethoven's better than either one. So there you go.
No, I'm Bach all the way on that. Listen to Miles Davis on occasion, a little bit of jazz.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a little all over the place musically. So.
Wow.
No bro country for me. No. Maybe some alt country, but no, not as much. But I don't generally listen to a lot of the mainstream pop stuff either. Tatagar, oh yeah, Toccata and Fugue and D minor. Yep, that's always fun to listen to.
Like the first classical thing I ever heard that was just like blew me away. Just blew me away, and I'm like, okay, this rock and roll stuff I've been listening to all this time, this is nothing compared to this. So it is yeah. Sadly, it's already 4 o'clock.
It is. It is.
So thank you all. This has been very fun. Thank you, Michael, for
no problem.
being our special guest today.
Glad to help out.
Awesome. And as always, we're recording these sessions. So if Michael said anything that you didn't get, you can always go back and watch it again. So yeah. Yes, Andre, sadly, it is. I listen to AC/DC every day, Mario. Every day.
Okay, well, if that's it, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks for everyone for hanging out today. Enjoy talking with everyone. And Mike should be on next Tuesday. So see you guys then.
Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday. Sorry. Yeah, Wednesday. Mike should be here Wednesday. So,
yeah.
All right.
So there we are.
There we go. See everyone then. Bye.